Asato ma sadagamaya tamaso maham jyotir gamaya Mrityormam amritam gamaya avir ahavir maedhi rudra yate dakshinam mukha te namaham pahinityam. Om, lead us from the unreal to the real. Lead us from darkness unto light. Lead us from death to immortality, and reach us through and through ourselves, and evermore protect us from ignorance by thy sweet, compassionate face. So my subject this morning is the witness consciousness. Consciousness is the principle of subjectivity, and our life goal is self-knowledge. In order to achieve self-knowledge, we have to make an inquiry into our experience of consciousness. It's a common experience that everyone passes through 3 states of mind in the cycle of a day: the waking, the dream, and the deep sleep. In those 3 states, we're conscious, even in deep sleep. Well, we wake up in the morning, we say, I slept happily. I knew nothing. Well, that means you're aware even in that state. But the yogis speak about a 4th state. It's not a state of mind, but it refers to pure consciousness, the witness of the natural states of consciousness. On one particular day, a devotee, his name was Ram Das, was meditating in the temple. And he was sitting there quietly, doing japa. And after a time, Mr. Banerjee came in, and he sat down a little distance in front of him. And he sat down, and he started doing japa. And a little while later, Mr. Joshi came in. He sat down next to Banerjee and started doing japa. And all was quiet for about an hour. Then Joshi turned to Mr. Banerjee and said in a subdued voice, when are you going to pay me that 20 rupees that you owe me? Banerjee looked at him and said, well, I don't owe you any money. And they began to speak, first in low terms, then more animated. Then Banerjee made a harsh remark, and they stood up, and they became very argumentative, and they were about to come to blows. Someone called the temple security. They came and made inquiries. What's going on? Do you have a witness for what's going on here? And both of them turned, pointed to Ram Das. Yeah, he saw it all. Let him tell you what happened. So this is a little parable, Swami Shivananda of Rishikesh, and speaking about the witness consciousness, the 4th state. It's called the 4th because it comes from the Mandukya Upanishad and Karika, which is a deep analysis of the sacred syllable Om. And when we do in that analysis, we discover that the Om is very symbolic of the whole spectrum of human life, and in the philosophy of language, covers the spectrum from A, U, Ma, 3 syllables, and at the end there's a silence. That's the fourth. So syllable 1, 2, and 3 are analyzed as symbolic of the different states of mind. And the fourth, that is the Turiya, is the pure consciousness. The Turiya is the Atman, the equivalent of this, what we call the Atman. That is the unconditioned, infinite, pure consciousness, one only without a second. The subject of the Turiya is called the Sakshi, the witness. It's the witness of when we hear in our study of Vedanta, you're going to read here about self-knowledge. It's the self. It's the self of self-knowledge. It's the self of the term we say the Atman is self-luminous. The Sakshi is the self of the term self-luminous. It's the I. It's the, as Ramana Maharshi said, it's not the I of the ego, but it's the I of the I. It's the I that of God himself on Mount Sinai, when asked to identify himself, said, I am that I am. This is the witness consciousness. It's the I of the famous, if you read the famous hymn, Nirvana Shatkam, where it says that I am not the body, I'm not the mind, I am pure spirit. I am Shiva, Shivoham, Shivoham. That's the Sakshi, the witness that is speaking in the words of that hymn. It's the I of the great Mahavakya, the great sentence of the Upanishads. Aham Brahmasmi, I am Brahman. That is, I am one with the ultimate reality. The word I there is the witness consciousness. The witness consciousness is maybe it's the I of the famous metaphor of Ralph Waldo Emerson about the transparent eye, the transparent eyeball. He has a metaphor in one of his essays. And in American transcendentalism, that transcendental I is the self. It's the witness. We could compare it more generally with the sun. The sun shines, illumines everything in the universe. It gives life and light to everything. It's the source of all light. It's the witness of our whole planetary system. Nothing lights up the sun. It's the source of all light. And so we could say it's the center, and it is the source. Now, this witness consciousness, the Sakshi, the term Sakshi, is a technical term in Advaita Vedanta. And it's used to refer to this transcendent I consciousness. But the concept of the witness cascades down also by the process of superimposition to include also what we would call the detached, disinterested, dispassionate objective mind of an enlightened sage. So here also is the detached witness used in a more general sense of an onlooker or a spectator or an observer. And it's in this sense that we can understand Ramdas in the parable as being the, quote, witness of the altercation. And we can speak of someone who was an eyewitness of a crime and in the court of law could be called as a witness, even though we don't, we're not committing ourselves to any idea of a transcendental knower. Now let's look more closely at the source of this idea, of this transcendental consciousness. In the most ancient times, the first philosophy in the whole world was formulated by the sage Kapila Rishi. Long before the Buddhist period, it was called the Sankhya philosophy. Sankhya predated the Vedanta system, but later was completely incorporated and embraced by that system. The word Sankhya just means enumeration, numbering things. And they like to give numbers to all their different categories. 25 principles of the universe. But they can all be reduced to two: consciousness and nature. This is all we need to understand in order to understand the essence of the Vedanta philosophy and of the wisdom of the East. And that is that there are two principles: Prakriti, nature, the object, and Purusha, that is the subject, consciousness. Now, Prakriti just means nature. Nature with a capital N. It's not referring to national parks or the trees and the grass and the trees and the park. It's referring to the whole of the cosmos and the macrocosm with the stars, the sun, the moon, the planets, and the microcosm, which is our body, our physical body, and our energy body, and our mental body, the physics, the biology, the psychology. This is all Prakriti. All of this is reduced to matter and energy, prana and akasha. That's all. And so when you talk about all about of our, even our interior states, even our thoughts, even our feelings, ultimately they are reduced to nature, an object of awareness. Nature, or Prakriti, is characterized by change. That's its marker. It's always in a process of change. Everything is in change and flux. Described in Western philosophy by the process metaphysics. That's the old doctrine of Heraclitus. You can't step in the same river twice. Everything is constant change. Nothing is stable. Nothing is eternal in this world. And whether we're analyzing stages here in the whole process of involution or in the process subsequent of evolution, the great cycle of time, It's always in a process of becoming, not of being. Prakriti, nature, is characterized as being inert. That means it has no consciousness. It's an object. Whatever is in nature can be reduced to an object. Nature herself has no consciousness. It has no life. It has no ability to move. It moves, but it doesn't have the power to move. It moves because it is in the presence of the Purusha. And just as we could say the iron filings on a workbench are just sitting there, but you bring a magnet, and the magnet is there. Now the magnet doesn't do anything. It just sits there. Oh, but all the filings immediately begin to assemble themselves into different patterns and shapes, get into alignment with that magnet and its field. Similarly, Prakriti wakes up in the presence of the Purusha, just as in any typical office, maybe. Late in the morning, you go in there. Not much going on, but if the boss comes to the door and he's standing there at the door, oh, suddenly there's a lot of bustle of activity there in that office. Or at a stage theater, where the actors are waiting, nothing's happening on stage until all the audience assembles. When they're all seated and waiting, then the curtain parts and the show begins. So it's a cooperation here of the two. Get the show going. But Prakriti, considered and conceptually analyzed here as a principle in and of itself, does not move. The whole of Prakriti, analyzed by the great Lord Buddha in its nature, as being all is suffering, all is transient, and all is empty of ultimate meaning. Everything is just going round and around in a circle. It's not going anywhere. It doesn't mean anything. Now, over and opposed to this principle is the principle of the Purusha. That is, the Purusha is the self. And by the self in Vedanta, what do we mean here by the self, ourself, myself? I mean my I consciousness, my consciousness. It's the principle of subjectivity. Consciousness is the opposite here of consciousness is the subject. It is that which is unchanging. Consciousness is equivalent to being. Being what? Just being who you are. Being at rest. Unmoving. Fixed. Eternal. And unchanging. Consciousness is like the screen in the movie theater. That all is happening there on the movie screen, all of the action and the dialogue and the drama. And amidst all that, there is an unmoving part. That's the screen that enables it all, that does not participate in the action, but enables it all to happen. This witness consciousness is eternal. It's immortal. It never dies. It's not in the process of becoming, that is, of being born, of eating and growing and living and metabolizing and reproducing and then growing old, deteriorating, and then death. That's the whole cycle. It's not in that cycle. It's like the screen here of the movie theater. It watches that change. It's eternal. It's immortal. It's beyond birth and death. I say it means it's not male or female. It's not. See, in Sanskrit, in philosophy, the word it, in English, when we say it, we think about, oh, it's like an animal or something, or like a rock. But in Vedanta philosophy, it is a term higher than any gendered term, because it's something which is beyond both. So this is the self. This is your self. It is the source. We could say that it's a light source. Maybe that's the best way to describe it. It's just like a candle burning in a windless place. And that candle light shines, and it's unbothered by the burning of the wick or the melting of the wax. It shines, illumines the whole room, just as our consciousness illumines the world around us as we see it. The candlelight shines. Even while the wick and the wick burns and the wax melts away. But the light just watches it all patiently. Do you think that shining, the candlelight ever gets tired of watching? No, it just watches forever. And so we could say that it's a Purusha. The Purusha, the light, is independent of the object which is being lit up. The universe, lit up by our consciousness, is dependent on our awareness to be perceived. But our awareness is independent of the names and forms. So this is the idea, you can see, of these two principles. In the Bhagavad Gita, the whole chapter on this subject. Chapter 13 is called the chapter on the Kshetra and the Kshetragya, that is the field and the knower of the field. These are two different things. The field is the whole world of our phenomenal experience. The field, we can think of a field. You can think of, in the Bhagavad Gita, you think it takes place. The Battle of Kurukshetra, Arjuna's listening to Krishna. Where the chariot is parked on a field, the field of battle. And a whole great melodrama is going to unfold there on the field. The field also, the Kshetra, it's like a farmer's field. And just as a farmer plants seeds and waits, and then for after a time, is able to harvest the fields. Similarly, we ourselves plant seeds, that is in the side of our actions, in the psyche, and there's some scars in our own psyche, which soon bear fruit, and we reap the fruits of what we've sown. So we have the field, and then we have the knower of the field. Now the knower is the, let me move this thing here. The knower is ourself. It's the Purusha, the awareness, the consciousness, the witness consciousness, our identity. Maybe not really our identity. The word identity just means what's printed on your driver's license, maybe. Your name and address, the things, the markers that kind of point to what you are. That would be your identity. Whereas yourself, that's who you really are. It's your the original guy. That's the driver's license shows a picture of your real person. You're the real person. That's the witness. That's the observer of the field. He's the one who observes all the passing melodrama, pleasure and pain, and yet remains unchanged and content and observer of all that change. So these two different principles, the field and the knower of field. What's the basic idea is that they are separate. They're two different things. There's the subject and there's the object. And that wisdom and ultimately our own liberation depends on our understanding the difference that we need to cultivate. This is all about attaining the wisdom of the we could call it discriminative wisdom. Understanding about who we are and about who the world is. That's all the whole process of spiritual life is sorting it out, figuring out who I am and what the world is. What are the characteristics of the world? That is the phenomenal world of my experience. And what are the characteristics of myself? And how they are different. Now, we can go back to the ancient times of the Upanishads. And which teaches us this basic idea that we have within us, as it were, two selves. And visualize yourself maybe one day walking through a forest and the sun is shining, the birds are singing, maybe a little breeze is blowing through the trees. You look ahead there and you see a particular tree, and on that tree there are two birds. Oh, yeah. So now you're reading the Mundaka Upanishad, 5th chapter, or the Shvetashvatara Upanishad. Perched on the self-same tree, there are two birds. One of them on the highest tip-top of the tree, and the other on a lowest branch. The bird on the higher bird, or the lower bird, let's say, is jumping all around. He's eating the sweet, and he sees, everywhere he sees, there's fruits growing on the tree. And so he's eating those sweet, bitter fruits. And every once in a while he gets a bitter fruit. He looks up, and there he sees the higher bird seated, calm, majestically, the witness of the forest. He sits there observing everything without eating. And the lower bird hops around a little bit more. He sees that. Well, that sounds like a good place to be. And so he jumps up a branch. Again, he gets distracted. Sweet, bitter fruits, gets a bitter fruit, looks up, sees that picture, that calm, higher bird. Yeah, I'd like to be like that. He jumps up a couple branches, again gets distracted. And so like that, time passes. And the lower bird gradually hops up and hops up. until at the very end, he gets up at the top, he looks up, Roy's right next to him, that higher bird. And the two merge into each other. And there's really only one bird left. And you know how sometime, maybe if you're walking in the forest, and you see maybe a slight wind is blowing, and the branches, the trees and leaves are moving and changing, and there's reflections. The sunlight is reflected on the leaves, and there's illusions in the branches and the leaves. And so here too, there was an illusion that there were two birds, but really there was only one bird all along. So that's the teaching from the Upanishads. Let's look a little bit at the symbolism. Of that analogy. The lower bird, of course, is our own, that's the jiva, the jivatman. The two selves within us are the jivatman and the atman. These are the two Sanskrit words which we want to know. The atman is our true self. That's the witness consciousness. The jiva atman is the living self. That is, it's our everyday walking around self-identity. And so the jiva, that is the person, the individual that we think ourselves to be, Swami Vivekananda calls them the real and the apparent man. The real, what is real? Real means it's unchanging. The other is apparent. So the lower bird is the apparent man. And living his life, engaged in doing like making a course of karma, eating the sweet fruits. Depression goes in the mind. Depression leaves the samskara in the mind. Creates a habit, and the vasanas compel him to act in the same, like this, caught in the vicious cycle of karma. He continues eating those sweet and bitter fruits, and yet he feels that there is a higher reality, and there is a gradual movement upwards, the vertical. See, spiritual progress is all about, spiritual progress is not horizontal progress. That means making progress, success, and happiness, and actualizing your potential, all of that's horizontal. Spiritual growth means vertical growth. Spiritual growth means hopping up the tree. Things change as you move up the tree. See, the higher bird is seated at the top of the tree. And that is higher. We have the analogy here of lower and higher. Maybe you don't like that analogy. You have to process that in your mind. There's lower and there's higher. And why is it higher? Well, because it's more, just as the axis of the tree is at the center, it's higher because it's at the center. It's closer to the center. And it's the source of the aspirations of the lower bird. As he looks up, he gets inspired, and he moves up and he makes progress. So that's the lower bird, caught, as it were, in the cycle of transmigration, that is in samsara, which is karma. The round of births, we're born, we die, and we're reborn again. And so on it goes around in a circle, round and round, like the dog chasing his tail. This is samsara. The higher bird, however, is different. The higher bird is looking on without eating. He's at the center. And higher here means higher means in Vedanta means includes all the lower. And transcends and includes, we could say. So contemplating maybe that higher bird is the ideal here of the detached witness consciousness, the discriminative wisdom. As we grow, then maybe that's our ideal. It's an ideal. Let me try to illustrate this with another. We can't do any better than think about the parables of Sri Ramakrishna. And once there was a bird who she lived at a seaside village near the harbor where all the great ships, sailing ships, would come in and dock. And there she lived happily. And one afternoon, flying around, meeting all of her friends, she became tired. So she flew over and over and she perched on the uppermost mast of a sailing ship. And there, the gentle rocking of the ship, she fell asleep. Now, unbeknownst to the little bird, that night, that ship weighed anchor and set sail. In the middle of the night, it sailed away from the harbor, on into the ocean. And by mid-morning, it was far out into the open sea. And the little bird, she opened her eyes, looked around, and she was so disoriented and confused and scared. Where am I? What's happened? Where are the houses that I knew, the trees that I knew? I've got to find land, she thought. And so immediately she began to fly. And she flew towards the east. And she flew, and the sun was rising. It was getting hotter and hotter. Realized after an hour or so, she realized there's no land in this direction. I've got to return. So turned and landed again on the ship's mast. There, rested for a little. Now it's mid-morning. She decided, I'll try again. She'll set off flying to the south, He flew and flew to the south. Wings were getting tired. He looked down, saw the water everywhere as far as she could see. Water everywhere. Sharks circling around. It's very dangerous down there. She's getting tired, no land. So she turned, barely made it back again to the mast, where she rested. And then in the mid-afternoon, she decided she flew again. She flew again to the north. She flew and flew to the north. It was getting colder and colder. She realized everywhere she looked, it's the water, ice. There's no land in that direction either. So very cold and tired, she returned to perch on the ship's mast. It was now in the afternoon. She'd make one last try. And she flew and flew to the west. As she flew, the sun was setting. It's getting darker and darker. She's getting more and more tired. She can't see any land. And so she returned then, again, flew back to the ship's mast, and there, tired, after flying all day, she fell asleep. And the next morning, she awoke again. And she looked around, and she was still lost, but somehow her spirits were high. And she realized that there isn't a land in land in this direction or that direction either. But here I am on the ship's mast. And you know, sometimes when you don't get that which you want, somehow you just maybe come back to your own being. You're tired of running and chasing after something. You decide just to be at rest, to be who you are. And you understand that life isn't all really about running and chasing after goals and after objects, but it's really just about the journey. And so here she saw before her there lay a great destination, a great new journey and adventure lie ahead, with the sun shining overhead and the blue waters all around. So I like that image of the higher bird and the witness consciousness. It's an ideal. It's a spiritual ideal. Ideal means maybe we could never reach it. An ideal, you don't reach an ideal. It's like the star, like the North Star. It's meant, the purpose of an ideal is to orient us, to guide us, to help us to make decisions, and to give us some meaning, some purpose. All of this comes from our ideal, our highest ideal. It's what gives us our direction. The direction gives us meaning. And meaning gives us some goal, some purpose. And so this is our ideal. That is self-knowledge. And it's the goal and purpose of spiritual life. Good. I think we'll stop here. It's good enough. You get the idea. If you have any questions or pushback, we can discuss in the library. Swami here? No? Okay, let me just give the chant here. Om Dyo Shantihi Antariksha Shantihi Prithivi Shantihi Apa Shantihi O Shadaya Shantihi Vanaspataya Shantihi Vishwe Hideva Shantihi Brahma Shantihi Saravam Shantihi Shantireva Shantihi Same Shantiredhi Om Shantihi Shantihi Shantihi. Om, peace is in heaven, peace is on the earth, peace is in the sky and in the waters. The herbs and plants and trees are full of peace. The gods are peaceful. May this eternal universal peace enter our souls and beings. Om, peace.